Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I do hope everyone's having a great week out there so far. There is much to talk about out there with the tropics. Things look to be heating up, and we're going to get very detailed in the latest information from the overnight model guidance. The first thing we'll speak on is current conditions, the latest outlooks from the National Hurricane Center, and then we'll compare all that model guidance. We'll speak on a little bit closer to home, an area we need to watch, and then we'll have a long discussion about the main development region way out there in the Atlantic, where some tropical waves could get going, and model guidance really likes the idea of that. We'll geek out with you guys a little bit, discuss the environmental background, steering currents of the Atlantic, and all of that, and then we'll round the video off with today's forecast. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's make sure this is going to work for us, and it is, so we're good. Let's take a look at the Atlantic. Anything out there interesting right at this moment? We have what's left over of Dexter way up here in the North Atlantic, not bothering anybody. So let's go on and take that back off your screen. This is an area of interest we are watching right into here, but as of right at this second, not doing much at all. We'll discuss that here in a second, but I wanted to circle the area we will be discussing right off the dot. And then the area that has a lot of people's attention, including mine, is way out here in the Atlantic. It is very convectively active right now, meaning you see these colors popping up on your screen here. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have stronger convection, taller updrafts. The taller up it gets, the colder it gets in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And this is reflected by, these oranges, yellows, and reds, and black embedded in those colors. So is there anything to find out here right now? No. The National Hurricane Center likes this area embedded in what we call the monsoon trough, a wave that could get going and then move maybe this way. And then once it gets sort of in this area, where does it go? So just wanted to circle what we'll be discussing right now, and then going forward, this is also still an area we will continue to watch as we'll have more tropical energy come off Africa, emerge over the Atlantic, have a shot to develop. And it's really the wave we can't see right now that I think has the best shot to develop, and I'll speak on why as we get deeper into the video. So let's get this back off your screen. The latest from the 5 a.m. update. Of course, Dexter up here, still tropical storm, 45-mile-per-hour system. It's beginning to make the transition to a post-tropical storm. Not going to bother anybody. This is the first area we'll watch. Has a 40% chance to develop. That orange X you see right there, that is around where we'll watch sort of it to develop, but it just really honestly focus on the orange area. 40% chance of tropical development in this region, meaning we could get a depression or a named storm. The next named storm is Aaron with an E. So will this end up developing one? We got to see. And then the next area we're watching is this 50% chance of tropical development in this orange area right here. So 50-50 shot. This wave is located right into here, at least the area that they think has the potential to develop. So we'll have to see if this ends up becoming a system too. The discussion says, hey, a tropical depression could form late this week or over the weekend. Now, an area you do not see on your screen that I want to circle is, I think by the time we get to this weekend, we'll have another area of interest that will pop up maybe for this area right into here. Okay, we'll have a low chance of tropical development. It'll start out as a 20 or 30% chance. As of right now, I don't see a reason why they would pull the trigger on that, but I could see them doing it over the next, basically sometime between now and Friday. And I'm going to talk about why here in a second. So latest from the National Hurricane Center, there you go. Now let's discuss a little bit closer to home first. I still think this has a shot to develop. There's been some changes over the last few days with this, but let's start off by looking at the Euro for tomorrow. So this is the eastern U.S. This is off the coast of the East Coast. This is the Atlantic here. So we got a lot of tropical moisture here. Rain is indicated by, the greens and the splotches of yellow, embedded areas of orange and red. So think of this as just, what it is, which is moisture. So what we watch for is I move this into Friday. Does anything sort of consolidate, get together, look a little bit more organized? And as we get into Friday, not really, but this is sort of the area we are watching. Okay, but, we get into Saturday. Whatever does have a shot to develop on the latest model guides, including the GFS, which is what I'm about to show you. This is the Euro, does develop a tropical system and kind of cruises it exactly where Dexter went. And this could become Aaron, but there's a high potential. It doesn't bother anybody. The steering currents have shifted a little bit on model guidance. Once upon a time, I was showing this kind of going right into the Carolinas as a weak tropical low. Now it's still showing development, but it has this thing going out to sea. So this continues and actually turns into a decent low pressure. But I still want to continue to watch this same area and even over the northern Gulf, as we're still going to have just a lot of energy hanging out over, the waters off the coast of Southeast warm. You got the Gulf Stream, and of course the northern Gulf is very warm. I mean, sea surface temperatures are in the upper 80s, low 90s in certain areas. So with such stalled out energy just hanging out with us for so long, that's why it's been so cool for early August standards across the Southeast, is because just a lot of cloud cover, stalled boundary, cold air damming is what we call it. It's been an interesting pattern to say the least. But we get into Sunday, a lot of moisture continuing to dance around, and you just got to watch the northern Gulf and just off the coast of the Southeast. I think we just need to continue to watch these areas for homegrown activity, stalled frontal boundaries popping off, creating lift and allowing for convection, and eventually that convection could become tropical. Now, what about the latest GFS? It does the same thing as the Euro. It develops a tropical system, but it really doesn't get it going until after it's heading back out to sea. And, it develops into an all-out tropical system, takes it exactly where Dexter went, and that could end up being Aaron pretty fast. Or does the system way out in the MDR become Aaron? I think it'll be a fight to which one takes the name. Does any of them take a name? But what I'm gathering with this, with the latest 24, 48 hours worth of model guidance, is that it looks like this might head out to sea if it does develop, or if it does at all. But we continue to move forward here. Still a lot of energy hanging off the coast of the Southeast. Okay, even the northern Gulf, not as aggressive as, say, the Euro. Okay, so we just need to continue to watch these areas even after this first little risk moves out the way. And you can see this wave when you look at the low-level VORT, 850 millibars, about 5,000 feet up in the air. You can see the little spin in the atmosphere. You look at the Euro, there it is, spinning away, but it's heading away from land. And even if this thing plowed right into land, I don't think it would do a ton, but you don't want to assume that because of what Chantal did for the Carolinas and caused that significant flooding. So you don't want to assume, and you got to choose your words lightly with some people, because, they're sensitive to this kind of stuff, and I don't blame them, especially with what Chantal did and with what Helene did last fall. You got to just be more sensitive to that kind of stuff. But anyways, I still would not rule out this still going right into the Southeast, but even if it does, it looks to be a weaker system. But listen, I would say this, I'm going to continue to double down on this. If we do get any kind of tropical system that develops in this area, there's going to be a lot of divergence aloft, a lot of winds being pushed out away from the system because of this ridge on top of the system. And basically what I'm saying is the upper wind pattern will support tropical development if you can get some sort of core, the birth of a sort of a tropical system to get going, and then it can tap into the favorable environment that it has to work with. And of course, we know that the waters off the coast of the Southeast are plenty warm enough. This is in Celsius. I know you see the 29, 30, maybe even some 31s in there. That's mid, even upper 80s as far as sea surface temperature. So it's plenty warm enough for tropical development. And we got this stripe of warm waters with the Gulf Stream that gets all the way up here too. So we'll just continue to watch that. I think regardless, a rainy pattern is going to remain in place for the Southeast for the foreseeable future. A lot of rain has an opportunity to fall today across the eastern Carolinas, but soggy pattern remains. It's wild. You go back and you look around this time last week, we could see this pattern coming, but it looked like it was going to last about a few days. It's being extended further and further and further out. These rain and clouds, heck, in my neck of the woods in central South Carolina, it hasn't hit 80 degrees since August 1st. That's unheard of around here. So pretty wild stuff. Very unusual pattern. So let's talk about way out there in the Atlantic, right? This has got a lot of social media buzz about it. A lot of probably irresponsible things are being posted, but this is the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook. So these are the professionals at the Climate Prediction Center. You got week 2 and week 3 on this graphic. And I'm really interested in showing you guys this because it backs what we've been talking about over the last several days. So between August 13th and the 19th, it's saying in this red area, 40% chance of tropical development, basically. Now in the striped area, red and white, you got a 20% chance of tropical development in this area. And then it looks like it's reflecting another area way out here in the eastern Atlantic. So to me, that's symbolizing two different tropical waves, right? But this area right here highlights exactly what the Euro is showing and now what the GFS is showing. And then between the 20th and the 26th is highlighting another area, not as high, but this area is probably attaching to this area into week 3. That makes sense. So 20% chance of tropical development. But this has my attention here, and we're about to discuss why. So we continue to move forward here. Let's look at the latest Euro from overnight. We'll start this off Thursday morning. Now, let's not totally forget about our area of interest out here. It has a 50% chance to develop. But I already read a comment in last night's video, saying that it's interesting. It's interesting that the Climate Prediction Center thinks the first wave could stay low in latitude. That's not the wave that it's latching onto. The wave it's latching onto is the wave behind the one I'm about to talk about. But the one that has a 50% chance to develop is this one right here. Okay, see that 10, 11 millibar low? And it's going to, the Euro just has been on it with sticking this out to sea, recurving. And this is what's left over right here. It's not much, but I do think that it could develop. But it kind of gets tugged north by an upper level low and just a weakness in the pattern created by that tut or upper level low. There's another wave that emerges behind this, and this is as we're getting into Sunday. Time frame up here, if I forget to mention it, because I will sometimes. There's a lot to speak on, and I'm not going to be perfect with mentioning time frames, but we still got this dancing around up here. This could end up taking a name also. 1008 millibar low, and then we got a tropical wave right here. Now this is the one that has my attention. This will be working into a more favorable MJO pulse of rising air. I'll speak on that more here in a second. And just favorable climate. We're getting deeper into August. The deeper you get into August, the more past history says that we get more tropical activity as we get into prime hurricane season. So this wave barely survives the Atlantic. And then it sneaks into the Eastern Caribbean where it begins to develop around day 10. Now there's other tropical energy behind this too, but let's focus on this wave. So let's go on and drop it back into the Caribbean. Day 10, this is moving into the Lesser Antilles. And this is starting to get into not this Saturday morning, but next Saturday morning. But it continues to like the idea of this wave. So we get into an unreliable time frame at this point. You got a strengthening tropical system in the Eastern Caribbean, south of Puerto Rico, and then it turns into a hurricane, hits Hispaniola, and then just rides the Greater Antilles, and we can discuss this until the cows come home, but it's so far out, it's hard to get. It's really not even responsible to get super detailed on this, but it basically isn't able to maintain strength because it's riding over landmass. But it continues to symbolize the fact that some sort of tropical energy can get in this area and develop. And if the islands weren't there, this would likely be becoming a major hurricane. So what's interesting to me is this gains a little bit more latitude compared to the last few Euro runs. And I honestly think that makes more sense. I don't like the idea of something getting into the Caribbean. If it does, I just think it'll turn north. And I know I keep saying this, but I'm going to explain why here in a second. But what about the GFS? Now, the one overnight, I haven't even looked at the 06Z GFS. We're about to look at it together. The one overnight now likes the wave that the Euro does. If you've been tuning in for a while, you know that the GFS is not like the first wave. But here is the first wave, and it kind of retains it. It still wants to keep it lower in latitude than the Euro. It doesn't want to turn this out to sea, but it never really gets it together. Okay? So it's still there, could do something. I do want to mention the GFS tries to get a tropical wave just going in the Caribbean here, outside of the energy out here. And then here comes the GFS with some sort of tropical energy right into here. Now, we only got about 10 days out. If you look at the run from last night, it had a wave sneaking into the Caribbean at around day 10. Okay? So let's go on and look inside. Okay, and we'll speed it up. Here's that first wave. What's interesting is the GFS has some energy developing right here, sort of just picking up on some energy that gets going in the Caribbean. And listen, the GFS ensemble shows that. It shows just L's popping up in this area. I just think everything's going to get more favorable. But does it pick up on that wave that the Euro does? No. But if you look at the run last night, it did. And it takes it just like the Euro does, gets it into either the Southwest Atlantic or the Caribbean, in this case the Caribbean, and strengthens this into a major hurricane where it ends up hitting the Yucatan Peninsula. So the GFS is starting to bite a little bit more on the idea of that second wave that isn't highlighted by the National Hurricane Center yet, but it is highlighted by the Climate Prediction Center. And they're not the same, but they work together, right? So what about the Euro AI model? I haven't showed this in a few days. It likes the second wave. Here it comes. And it's just is a wave we have to watch, and it turns into a strong hurricane. And for whatever reason, the Euro AI model likes the idea of hitting Florida nonstop. It is just a model that likes hitting hurricanes, likes hitting Florida with hurricanes. I don't know what's up with that. But anyways, what we take from this is it likes that wave behind the area of interest wave right now. Now, what about the Euro ensemble guidance? Okay, this is the first wave. Remember on the Euro ensemble, it makes up 51 members, and every member that forms will show up on the screen. Don't think there's like 50 low pressures out here. Think of this as a signal. Okay, first signal for the first wave that has a 50% chance to develop. It likes the idea of this being a little bit more stronger than maybe the past runs, but it does turn us out to sea. Now, there's a couple stragglers that try to get a little bit further west that might flirt with Bermuda, but watch how this entire area begins to light up down here as we get closer to day 10. Okay, with all those L's, and you even got some sneaking around here in the Caribbean before the main waves show up. So we take it all the way to day 10 days from now, and this is some sort of signal for a wave, and this is a signal right here. And what's wild is this pretty much reflects exactly what the Climate Prediction Center is saying. Wave potential here, and then it could potentially develop, and then another wave potential back here. Now the signal for this is pretty quiet, but this is the area that I'm not I wouldn't use the word concern, but the one that I'm watching the most. Now, a very smart individual named Andrew, I met him last hurricane season, or at least on social media. He made a really cool post, and he's very smart. He's probably smarter than I am when it comes to these figuring out the MJO pulses and stuff like that. I'm always learning with that. But he just says, eventually significant improvements are on the way, most likely for the Atlantic. But one thing that could cause a negative sort of pushback on this favorable pulse is just the background of the Atlantic is very stable and dry. So it's going to take probably a couple tropical waves, one being the one right now, to really moisten it up. But you can see how, you see the green down here? This is how that favorable pulse of rising air moves in, begins to take over some of that dry air. But listen, the combination of between this favorable pulse and the timing of the year would normally scream a significant uptick in tropical activity. So one thing I'm watching is if we look at the Euro ensemble here, it's pretty cut and dry. Brown, you see on your screen, dry air. Green, moist air, right? So this is the first wave, all right? It's creating a moist environment. And one thing I want you to notice is how this dry air is diving pretty far down into the main developmental region. So this first wave sort of wipes out that dry air, okay? And then here comes the second signal for a wave. Little bit of a finger of dry air diving down in front of it. And then that sort of wipes out that dry air. And then whether this area right here is an all-out tropical wave that eventually develops, look at the environment behind this. It looks like the entire monsoon trough, MDR, main development region, the tropical Atlantic begins to get moist. And I do think that opens the window for just a more active period of tropical activity. So you get pretty far out and it just looks moist out here. You compare that with kind of right now, a lot of dry air trying to dive down into here. So I think that each one of these waves continues to moisten up the environment out here and makes it more and more favorable. And that's what I'm worried about. You combine that with if any wave can sneak into this area, and let's hope not, but eventually, which it just always seems inevitable, if anything gets going in the Gulf, the upper wind pattern supports a strengthening tropical cyclone. We'll leave it at that. A lot of light flow aloft, and this is winds at 200 millibars, so 36 to 40,000 feet up in the air, way above these actual cyclonic rotations of these tropical systems, and it supports just light flow. And even the flow that's there, it supports a lot of disbursement of air, divergence. So you basically have an upper wind pattern that's favorable. And I know there's not a whole lot to take from this, and I'm just kind of backing off on dissecting this to death because we don't even know if there's going to be a tropical system in this area. But just know that if anything gets into this area, the upper wind pattern is going to support a strengthening tropical system. Light flow down here, ridging, light ridging on top of this system. You don't really have an aggressive tug in the atmosphere to push these systems one way or the other. And you combine that with the fact that, and when I say light flow aloft, when you have a lot of flow aloft, meaning stronger winds aloft meaning in the upper levels of the atmosphere, it normally can create strong wind shear. So I hope that makes sense. We know that tropical systems don't like wind shear. What about these sea surface temperatures? You know, what's wild is the Caribbean, not crazy warm. I mean, it's 27, 28 degrees Celsius, the 80s. But, once you get into the Western Caribbean, much warmer. Mid upper 80s when you compare, Celsius to Fahrenheit here, of course. And then the Southwest Atlantic, very warm, above average. And then, of course, the Gulf is mid upper 80s, in some cases the low 90s. So rocket fuel as far as sea surface temperatures for these tropical systems. The last thing we'll discuss, guys, is this upper wind pattern. The reason this first tropical wave that eventually could become a tropical system turns out to sea is because you see these areas, and I always just don't know what color to call this, but we're going to call it orange, okay? You see this orange color right here and this right here, this is high pressure, and you see the blue, this is low pressure. Our actual tropical systems is a low pressure. Now, where you see white, that's sort of just not a combination of both, but sort of a weakness in the pattern, lack of flow. So there's not a strong influence either way or the other, but there's still one or the other. It's just hard to tell because it's not a strong one way or the other. It's not a strong ridge or strong troughing, which another fancy word for lower pressure. So our wave will be right into here, and this just has an easy route to kind of turn out to sea. And we know that low pressure likes to gain latitude, likes to get north, likes to recurve. When we talk about tropical systems, and the stronger the storm system is, stronger the low, the more it likes to fight to get north. So that's why it looks like this will turn north. And one thing that you don't really see on this very well, you can see it better when you look at the upper wind currents, is there is some sort of tut right here, and probably a better draw right here is like this. And it can actually feel the current around this tut, so it actually will try to yank it out to sea. But we still are trying to figure out some things out in this area because some members still try to get this further west. But honestly, we're waking up this morning, I'm even more confident that this is going to turn out to sea. But we still need to watch because the GFS still gets this tropical wave and gets it pretty far west. So what changes with that first wave? I mean, with that second wave that we've been talking about, right? Why does that cruise further south in latitude, just further south? It's because we get more of a ridging influence that builds on top of it. So, the flow around this ridge sort of doing this. Okay, so, if we do get any sort of wave that develops right here, it's going to kind of follow and just, hang out further south because there's just more of a ridging influence on top of the North Atlantic. And in fact, a little bit of some stronger ridging could show up right here. So that'll force anything that, like I said, just develops down into here and kind of keep it south. Now this is getting into, early next week. So at this point, we have a tropical system that begins to get going right here. See that blue blob? That is the Euro ensemble. Well, this is actually the Euro reflecting our lower pressure. Now, one thing I want to note is there's still not really a big influence of any kind of Atlantic high in this area right here. but there's still light ridging in place. You just can't see it. So there's not much flow in general in this area because you're not getting a substantial flow from any kind of low pressure, an upper level low, or high pressure. A little bit of ridging right here. So, I questioned a couple days ago, well, I think yesterday morning's video, on why it's keeping it so far south, and it makes sense that the latest Euro wants to gain a little bit more of a northerly turn with that hurricane in the down here near the Caribbean islands. And but still, I mean, there is enough ridging on top of this to sort of keep this further south. But man, it's hard for me to believe that if we get a strong system down here in the next 10 to 15 days, that it's just going to hang out that far south. I just get the feeling that if anything gets going right here, and there's not much of an Atlantic high in this area, that it's going to try to turn a little bit faster than what's being modeled. But we can dissect that until the cows come home. At the end of the day, it's very far out. And I just like to try to use these as learning lessons of how steering currents work. So moving past all that, let's get all this back off your screen and let's talk about today's weather. Now, as far as what's happening right now, we just continue to deal with pesky, heavy rain across the Carolinas. We just can't get rid of this. It's just a stagnant pattern. So we will continue to deal with this this morning, and we're getting flash flood warnings actually, in central North Carolina right now, and we got a big area of storm activity surging through the Midwest right now, getting into Iowa, hitting areas of Nebraska, and we got a surge of moisture that's going through the Pacific Northwest. And watches, warnings, and advisories, red flag warnings out in the hot pink counties here in the West, extreme heat warnings in Arizona, areas of Nevada, Southern Cal, heat advisories in the orange. We got flood watches up for Georgia, North Carolina. Just a lot of rain continues to set up. Heat advisories for South Florida continues to be very hot. The Storm Prediction Center outlook for today, the light green, general risk of thunderstorms. But the dark green, level 1 out of 5, risk of severe weather. 1 up here for northern Minnesota, southern Minnesota, areas in the Midwest into the plains. So watch out for these storms to pack a bit of a punch today. As far as severe weather, could get an upgrade to a slight risk. I could see that happening here in the Midwest, right into this region. The chances of excessive rainfall, a little bit of a risk across the Midwest, but the main area we need to be worried about is North Carolina into eastern South Carolina, a little bit of Georgia too. But this area we need to watch for right in here. Watch out for Raleigh, Durham, Winston-Salem, down to Fayetteville, Florence, Myrtle Beach. This area could get a lot of rain over the next 24 hours. So as far as today's weather in the southeast, talking about that rain, we'll take just a broad look at this. We take it to about mid-late afternoon. A lot of rain showing up for southern Georgia, northern Florida, pop-up thunderstorms across Florida. But we get a surge of very heavy rain likely and thunderstorm activity in the eastern Carolinas that'll show up. And listen, take my word for it. We got this yesterday morning here in Columbia, and these storms were loud. They didn't produce much in the way of strong winds, but they were loud. The lightning was intense. So just the atmosphere is still unloading out here. And, we get into this evening, and the eastern Carolinas will continue to get a lot of heavy rain, and then a tropical system will try to get going off the coast of the southeast, maybe as we get into like Thursday into Friday. But rainfall between now and about 8 p.m. tomorrow, a few inches of rain is possible. Once you get into these red areas, that's where over 2 inches of rain could fall. Columbia about an inch, Florence, same thing. And just a lot of rain could happen in these areas. And we'll move up to North Carolina too. And there it is. Be mindful. A lot of this is falling right now. So a lot of rain continues to fall, guys. And this is what's keeping those temperatures down, because we got a little bit of dry air, allowing for dews to drop into the 60s, dew points. This allows for the temperatures to drop lower. The northeast is warmer than the southeast, at least portions of it. And a little bit of rain could make it all the way up to New Jersey, the Delmarva area. A little bit of thunderstorm activity up in New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. But, and then this could produce some heavy rainfall. Look at this cell kind of late this evening in southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire. So be aware of some storms out here. In the south central U.S., some pop-up thunderstorms are possible, very isolated in southeast Texas, Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and a little bit of shower and thunderstorm activity across Colorado and New Mexico, but not a big deal, it looks like. And then up here in the north central U.S., we'll get the what's happening this morning that will weaken, it should, and then we'll get another round of thunderstorms that will hit the same areas this evening. You see these thunderstorms popping up. It's around 8 o'clock tonight. hitting Sioux Falls, Sioux City, getting into southwestern areas of Minnesota, sinking into northwestern Iowa, and this line of storms will surge through the evening all the way to Fort Dodge and all the way to Des Moines, and we could end up getting a slight risk upgrade in these areas. Damaging winds are possible, so be mindful of that. The western U.S. surge of rain moving across the state of Washington, northwest Oregon, but the rest of the West, outside a little bit of rain action in the Four Corners region, pretty quiet. Listen, it ain't going to stay quiet for much longer out west. Once we start to get into late August, September, we start to get a changing of the seasons that is quite noticeable. So, anyways, moving past that, temperatures, there's that pool of cool air across northeast Georgia, through the Carolinas, all the way up to Virginia. Once again, temperatures will be held down. It's insane. We have not hit 80 degrees or higher since August 1st here in Columbia. And there's a chance we might not hit it until Friday. It's around 64 degrees right now. I'm starting to get sick of the rain, I agree, but man, these cooler temperatures are nice. It's like all our AC HVAC units are just like, just taking an extended nap time. We all can say, hey man, thanks for what you've done this summer. Continue to have a nice little break. I can look at my energy usage. I have a Nest thermostat, and it basically says how many hours my HVAC unit runs, which, by the way, guys, it's a great investment. Fantastic investment. I've been able to catch there being an issue with my HVAC unit before I would have physically saw there was an issue with it by looking at the hours my unit ran. That's how I caught back in spring that there was something wrong with it. I wouldn't have known for a long time until it warmed up and it wasn't cooling my house if I wouldn't have looked at that. It's a great investment. But anyways, enough of that. Northeast, Nest thermostat sponsor me. Northeast, not too warm, but it's warmer up there than it is in areas of the southeast and mid-Atlantic. And you can see the middle of the country is certainly warming up, 90s, 100s, and there is a pool of cooler air for the Pacific Northwest. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Thank y'all for the support lately. I've definitely had an uptick in growth, but no devotion today. So going forward, and I was doing my morning walk, I was like, we do not need to go 2 days in a row without a devotion. It means a lot to me. So going forward, soccer got canceled last night. So normally on Wednesdays, I do my little break from going to the gym and sleep in a little bit. Wednesday's kind of my day, and then Saturday or Sunday is. So we're probably going to do devotions for Monday and Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, and probably pick one day out the weekend. So we're going to aim for 4 to 5 mornings out the week. So do apologize for going 2 days in a row. I think I did the same thing last week. That hurts my soul a little bit. So we'll get right back to it. So I don't want you guys to think just because things are picking up out there that we're going to lose touch of who we are and what we stand by and glorifying God. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.